And so, before I get into telling you how we learn from you directly, because I think it's going to open up a few concepts that are important. Do you think that this is and after all is said and done, given that, for example, our federal budget, we have almost $1 trillion going to the military, all right? And that we're cutting down on basics, right? The infrastructure projects are not getting the dollars that they need, you know, the safety net is just fraying. Do you think it is, in fact, after all is said and done, a crisis of democracy? The people, the 90+% of the people who should have a say into where the budget goes, where do our tax dollars go? That
Yeah,
should be dictated, methodically and systematically, not
yeah,
chronically, right? Every single budget should be dictated by 90%, the majority of the people. And the majority of the people are, the working class, amongst them, a good chunk of them being always in a very precarious situation. Do you think that if we had an actual democracy, right, these problems would basically almost disappear over time quickly, as opposed to where we are today, where the decisions about just basic things like the budget is being dictated by political forces that do not represent the vast majority of the people?
yeah. Well, I just read this morning that the Senate decided not to pass extending
Yeah,
the Affordable Care Act
yeah,
credits.
yeah.
Millions of
Another
Americans,
baffling, to be honest, another baffling decision, both in terms of decency and just in terms of political calculus, right? But
totally.
anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, and millions of Americans are going to feel that
Yeah,
very quickly. They're
yeah,
going to be feeling that next month when their health insurance bills double. I mean, we have the opportunity to voice our opinions at the voting polls. I think my hope is that a lot of the concerns that Democrats have been raising and talking about, of the costs of food prices, the cost of health insurance, the cost of housing, all of those increases that the bottom majority of Americans are feeling, it's going to hit your pocketbook. And I think, electing politicians that care about these, and to your point of like, how are they allocating the budget
yeah.
that's going to impact everyday Americans versus the elite few.
Yeah, and I think I really believe that the core of it is it's a failure of our democracy, and the sort of the tragedy is people are not going to really get involved in their local government and all that because they're just consumed by survival, right? And so it creates a condition of weakened democracy, right? As a result of that kind of situation where you don't have time really to go and do am I frozen? Do you see me
A little
frozen?
bit. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
can hear you.
Okay. It's yeah, okay. Because I thought it was just me. Anyway, it's an interesting pose I have there. But anyway, so I think yeah, so I think it's sort of like a vicious circle, you know what I mean? Uh,
Yes.
to get democracy, people have to have at least the baseline of where they can actually have time to go and engage in their attend, at least have the peace of mind to think beyond tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and so, okay, so let me tell you how your book inspired us to act, right? So, somewhere in the middle of that shutdown, um, because my work has me engaged with lots of service coordinators, right? And so I noticed this situation that I live in my bubble, in McLean, Virginia, just outside of DC. And so I had no idea, to be honest with you, just
Yeah.
how. And I don't think, I mean, I consider myself a decent human being, right? In terms of, and I think
Absolutely.
the vast majority of people I know and people I don't know are decent human beings. They care
Yeah.
about, we are social animals and we have compassion. And our society would not, I mean, they say, oh, we need the rules and all that. The rules and all that would not work if people were not actually decent, You can just look at the traffic, right? People are just, they follow not because they will be punished, but because it's the right thing to do, right? Anyway, so I have this feeling, or sort of there is people are decent. Vast majority of people are decent, and yet we all live in our bubbles, and so I think I'm typical in terms of I didn't realize just the extent of this sort of silent suffering that's going on.
Yeah.
And then when I read your book, that suffering is not chronic. It's not, it's not like crisis is happening all the time, right? There is just constant hum of suffering that's going on out there, unnecessarily, to be honest with you. And so, in that midst, I started asking the basic questions, which is the first one that I asked, is like, wait a minute. I know I know that this country is wealthy. I know that there's food that's being wasted, talking about tons and tons of them every single day, thrown away. And yet here we are. We have these seniors, most vulnerable, right? It's obscene that all people will have to choose between medicine and food, for example, or have to go, and some of them were going like 2 or 3 days in a row eating just to fill their stomach. So eating unhealthy food, not
Yeah.
fruit and all that. They go to the dollar store and they get some stuff, right? That is not healthy for you at all. And if you have a condition like diabetes and all that, even makes it even worse. So you can see that vicious. So anyway, all these things just hit me in the face, as I became aware of them, right? And so since I'm one of those people who just decide to act and act, and I have a network of people who are like me, decided to launch a nonprofit called the First Access Foundation, right? And the First Access Foundation, sort of as a result of reading a book, comes to the conclusion that in order to solve the problem, first of all, it needs to be solved permanently, almost permanently, meaning if we are going to set up a food pantry, that food pantry cannot be reactive. There has to be an infrastructure, right, where it's part of the job of whoever, service coordinator, right? It's part of their job that they have a network of volunteers. Those volunteers are not episodic. They are part of, an established network, and the drivers, the food bank, and we created actually the foundation mainly because many of these people, in order to access the food bank, there was some paperwork. They need to show that they were part of a nonprofit or something, right? And so that's
Right.
at least for some of them, right? And some of them were not part of nonprofit, so they were like this roadblock, right? And so how do I solve this, right? So I would say, okay, you just declare yourself as part of this foundation, right? Here's our EIN, all that and all that, and then just fill out paperwork, right? And so all of a sudden, folks were able to zoom through that initial hurdle, get to the food bank, right? And then, okay, well, then the food bank, but how do I transport it? Okay. And so right now we're in the middle of launching our very first one by the end of December that has this replicable end-to-end, right, food pantry that is sustainable, number one. And number two, that observes and respects many of your principles, which is you can't just give them, because initially you're like, we're going to give them the packets, right? And they take it, right? When we read like, okay, well, maybe that's better than nothing, but maybe we can do better than that. And in
Can
fact,
do better.
we can do better than that by not by just you know incorporating it, right? Um, and so, like for example, for the first pantry, and it's going to be it's in High Point, North Carolina, sorry. High Point, North Carolina. There's one community. I'm working with the service coordinator, and so we found, for example, we're just about to get somebody who's donating a freezer, right? So they're donating a freezer. They're gonna install it there, so they can store say perishables there, fridge, right? Because they don't have a big freezer enough, right? And then there's a carpenter who's going to put up a pantry so that they can put the food there. These are all
Mhm.
volunteers, right? And they're all there. And it was not a big deal to find them, to be honest with you. It just required some will, right?
And I'm curious, why High Point, North Carolina, if you're in McLean? How did you find them?
Um, well, I mean, my company works with lots and lots of these service coordinators, and so I made out to call somebody who wants to be the pilot, and many of them applied and so on, and this one was the one who was chosen. So, yeah, um, and and one of the key important things, it needs to be replicable, right? So it's not going to be a one-off, right? So
Mhm.
part of the sort of the deliverable there, so to speak, is the food pantry itself sustainable, but
Mhm.
also here's how we did it, and we need to do it in such a way that the next one, and we'll try to do as many as we can until we figure out like a template or set of processes and so on, and maybe a network of people will be able to help with the processes and all that. The bottom line really is the following, right? Once we decided, once we realized that the resources are there, it's a matter of logistics and matter of will. and matter of effort. And once you set it up, if you have people who are willing to maintain it, they will. And so I'll start with the first tenet that I think that was very useful to us, which is choice, right? Why is that important in your opinion?
I have a whole chapter in my book about choice. And whenever I present and talk about my work, it always comes up. Um, there's not hard data on this, but the data that I have and visiting many, many food pantries and talking with many, many food banks for years around the country, about half of all food pantries in the country don't offer choice. And that became very apparent during COVID because with public health precautions, we had to be careful and we went to pre-bagging food. And many food pantries got used to that. And it's time to bring back choice. It's time to bring folks back inside. And there's a couple of things. We've done some really rigorous research with Feeding America and a number of food banks around the country. When food pantries offer what I call full choice, and that's not just limited, maybe you get to select one item, but you design a food pantry like a grocery store where people can actually touch, look at the food, touch it, put it in their own bag. That's full choice. You have better satisfaction from the neighbors themselves. That makes sense. You have better satisfaction for the staff and volunteers, many of them who were skeptical and said, I don't think we can do this. We're afraid people may take too much food. When they convert to full choice, they say, we'd never go back. Like, this is just a better way to run a food pantry. And you have less food waste. So we're all concerned environmentally about food waste in our culture. And when people can choose their food, they're going to select the food that they know their family can use. And that's where you can see more cultural food preferences. You can see what people are selecting. The other thing that I think is important when we think about choice, especially for seniors, is we have an epidemic of loneliness in our society. Many people feel isolated, feel left alone, like you want a social connection. And especially for elderly senior citizens, it's challenging, many of them living alone or not having social support. When you drive up or when you go to a food pantry and they hand you a bag of food, it tends to be very transactional. We're
Mm.
just trying to efficiently move the food. And when you offer choice, it opens up the opportunity to have more relationship, to have conversation, to look folks in the eye. How are you doing today? And sometimes that interaction, that relationship can be like the only interaction you may have in a day where you feel seen and you feel heard. And those relationships, those conversations can open the door to other service navigation and other wraparound supports. Like, tell me more, what's going on with you? Like, oh, I'm having a hard time paying my medical bills. How can we connect you with some other supports? I'm having a hard time with transportation. Let's connect you with some other services. So choice is just, it's a game changer. And from the research that I've done, pretty much 100% of the time. And it's a really incredible track record. When food pantries convert to offering more choice, they just say it's a better way to run a food pantry.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree, 100%. And so for us, the way we're taking it one step at a time, incorporating your idea and your suggestion here, which is based on actually evidence, right? You're not just theorizing,
Yeah.
um, is to start with, okay, we're going to take care of milk, eggs, okay, initially, right? And meat, um, and a couple other things like basics, right? And we're framing what we are going to be able to do. This is what we're doing, but you get to choose, right? You get to choose, and so there's a system where people get to select, right? And then what we're also doing is part of the volunteers is delivery to their place, so they don't have to get
Nice.
it, right? So
Yeah.
that sort of addresses dignity here, right?
Yeah.
So this is what you asked for, and this is what you got, and then the context here is service court is senior living communities, and so there is a service coordinator. So they are talking to them. They're not living
Yeah.
alone, right? So there's that context. But the packaging here is and the delivery is done to address, which I think. also is a thing with food stamps, which is like, okay, people have a sense of self, you know, regard and self-respect and so forth, right? And they have
You
to,
have the
right,
agency to select your own food. Yeah.
with the agency and all, and you are served, and it's and people, it's and the service coordinator, that's what they do. They serve their, and so they love this. They give them a choice, right? Um, and from your book, and from my own experience, I don't think there's going to be abuse where people are going to take more than a day. I just don't, right? I don't.
Well,
I think anybody who says that they have an axe to grind or whatever it may be, right?
yeah.
People, and especially if they are part of a community and they know that taking something that they don't need is going to
Yeah.
actually mess up somebody else up, right? And so they have that.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's so much pride and stigma and that holds people back from getting help
Yeah.
because so often people will say, I know there are other people in the community that need it more than I do.
Yeah.
And so breaking down that stigma and saying, as a food pantry, as a food distribution partner, like we're here for you. And if you need food, please reach out and get the help. And I just got an awesome email from a food pantry in rural Texas that had been offering choice, but they recently took out all of the limits of
Mm,
just truly letting folks, saying take what you need and leave enough for others. And she said it just worked so beautifully because choice also is the ability to say, no, I don't need that.
yeah.
I already have enough of that at home.
Yeah.
No, so I think again, trusting the good human nature in folks, and I agree with you, like that, generally, folks are inherently
Yeah.
decent. And I think when we extend that respect and that trust and building relationships, people are inclined to say, this is great. I know I can come back and get more when it's here. I'm
Yeah.
going to just take what I need and leave enough for others.
Yeah, and I think key to the success, in my opinion, and this is one of the things I took from your book, is key to the success is them knowing that this is not a one-off, or who knows when the next time you're going to be able. So if they know that this is
Yeah.
okay, this is actually a system, and therefore you don't have to rush and grab as much as you, because also it's part of human nature is to make sure you take care of yourself, right? And so that's why you see, I would say, even though we're all good and all that, but if there's a crisis and you just got to take care of yourself, you just go rush and get it, right? But if you take that away, meaning, no, it's not that situation, right? Every week, the pantry is going to be filled. You're going to get to choose what you want this week. Maybe this week you're going off to see family, so you don't need anything, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't ask for anything. Or this week there was some milk left over from last week, so you don't need more this week. Maybe you get the smaller carton and so forth, right? So I think that getting the folks to know that there is a system that is there permanently, okay?
Yeah.
Permanently. And it can be done. I mean, again, we go back to the resources are there and the people are
Yeah.
there. It can be done permanently, to your point.
Yeah.
That the whole of your book is about that. It's not, you should not be reacting to crises, right? You should
Yeah.
be setting up a system. Now, I'll give you the last word on, if you were to give us advice beyond what I just mentioned in terms of the takeaways from your book, what would you say to the folks involved in our project who are really trying to deliver sustainable food pantries with by being informed by your core tenants, right? What would you say, like, watch out for this, and that, or some tips or anything
Yeah.
like that would be helpful?
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate the question. So there are food pantries in virtually every community in our country. So if you're thinking about getting involved, go visit local food pantries,
Yeah.
find out who is in the area already, and visit a few. Because when you've seen one food pantry, you've seen one food pantry. And what we don't need is more food pantries that are right next to each other. We want to make it streamlined so folks are coordinating services, collaborating with
That's a good point.
other social service agencies. So the more that we can leverage the good work that's already happening within communities. And a lot of what I'm doing these days is talking about collaboration, partnership, coordinating services. Very often, food pantries work in isolation. So they don't
Interesting.
know that there's another food pantry 2 blocks away or 2 miles away. And maybe they're open the same hours and days of a week. That's not great for a neighbor if you need food and the only food pantries in town are only open on Tuesday mornings.
Yeah.
So coordinating services, even consolidating services to say, you've got space, we need more space, we've got volunteers, you need volunteers. How do we coordinate more together? Because we're going to be stronger when we work together.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's almost always goes back to logistics, right? The resources are there, and so coordination,
Yes.
into your point, right, is crucial. Katie Martin, thank you so much for your time and for all fun for the book. It's out on Amazon. It's out there. You can buy it, right?
Yeah.
Who is the publisher? It's
Island Press.
Island Press, right? It's an excellent book, really excellent book, for anybody who's interested in learning about our food situation, um, our food, what do we call it? Our food precarity situation.
Yeah.
Should pick up the book and read it. Um, and again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you. Thanks a lot.
Likewise, thank you.